I'm so glad you're here. So Frame and Fiber is my picture framing and yarn shop in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. You can see my sample wall of picture frames behind me. I have hundreds, probably thousands of samples on this wall. And what you can't see is all of my fibery things across the way. So here I am on my May Live a Day 2022 challenge. This video that I'm doing and that you are watching is part of a series of videos that I'm doing where I go live every day in the month of May. I have not gone live every day in the month of May. I have skipped a few days here and there. I can't also get this camera correct. Okay. I'm looking up. This is an odd angle because I can't figure out how to make the camera work when I'm going live. So this is the best I could do. Anyway, each week that I've done this so far, I've had a bit of a topic that I want to talk about. And this week, I want to talk about custom framing. So today is going to be covering some of the materials and methods that we use in picture framing. It can be kind of confusing if you're not used to picture framing. You know, there's a lot of things that you hear you should do or you shouldn't do. There's buzzwords that people walk into or people use all the time at my framing counter that they don't necessarily understand. And that's because there's tons of information out there that we can all have access to, and not all of it is good. That's just the ins and outs of it. So picture framing is an industry that is kind of one of those things, like everyone knows the general gist of picture framing, but you might not necessarily know like how it's done, what the point of it is, all of that. So it can be a little bit mysterious. When you walk into a picture frame shop, it can also be overwhelming because there's lots of things that you need to choose and you don't necessarily understand the choices. So hopefully some of this will help, and the rest of this week, the videos that I do, hopefully they will help. So let's talk about some of the materials that we use in picture framing. Before we get to the one that you will obviously know, the picture frame, let's talk about all the other stuff. I'm going to break it down from the back of the frame to the front. So the back of the frame is what we call the substrate. Sorry about my creaky chair and my fidgety movements. So the substrate, or the piece of board that holds everything in place in the frame. You'll hear people use the word foam core. This is foam core. It's a piece of foam that gets put behind whatever is being framed. Anything can be framed. So this is a substrate. There are different types of foam board. This is an acid-free foam board. Acid-free is one of those buzzwords or buzz phrases that people use. Black foam board. This is for specific projects, like if you are having an article framed or a piece of fabric that has stitches on it that you can see a lot of the threads, dark threads behind the white or natural fiber, or I'm sorry, fabric. You can put this behind there to hide some of that. This is used for news articles and newsprints that have the back sides that are printed, so you don't see all of that type from the opposite side coming through. This is a mount core. Hello, Karen. How are you, my love? This is called mount core. This is a heat activated foam board, not acid free. Even if the foam board itself starts out as acid free, as soon as you put an adhesive that you need to use heat for, that adds acid. So don't be fooled by that. This is not acid free. Hello, Rachel. But this has lots and lots and I know, awesome sauce sunshine. Oh my gosh, Karen, it's so lovely and sunny out. Hi, Alice. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so mount core heat activated adhesive. This is for posters and photographs that you want perfectly flat. And then we also have Coroplast. And this looks like corrugated cardboard, except that it's made out of, I believe this is acid-free. I could be wrong, but this is a substrate. It's super strong, so we use this on big pieces. Not all of this will come into contact with your artwork or your stitching or whatever it is that you have framing. Sometimes it's just used in the back of the piece to give it some structure so it's not floppy in the frame. So this, the heat mounted, would touch your work because your work is being glued down to it in a press. Again, this too, you might want to use this as the backer for, what did I say, newsprint and fabric. However, if you are worried and want it to be more of a museum mount, this is where we get into matting. Matting is used on the front of the, can you see back here? See this right here? Oops, right there? That's matting. So you use it on the front to protect the piece from the glass touching it and to add some prettiness to your frame. But when you take acid-free mat boards and you back the back of your piece, so that right there is a cross stitch. If instead I wrapped it around this mat board instead of this foam board, that's an extra protection against acid. Because although foam board, hey my friend, Chelsea and or Sue, I'm not sure which one, but hello. This foam board is acid free because this front piece has been treated so that it would not have acid. But this is where framers, we have trade shows all the time, and it's boring to everyone, and this is probably a boring video to you guys, but framers will sit in a class, hi Sue, will sit in a class and debate how acid free this is, because there's foam in between the two pieces of acid free materials. That foam has acid in it. So there's all kinds of debates out there. And although some of them are more right than others, not necessarily wrong. They're just different methods. So an added protection. Thanks, Rach. I was almost said Sue. Thanks, Rach. So the added protection is to take mat board and use this as the backer to the artwork, and then using either the foam board or the Coroplast as the backer, as the strength to hold up the piece. So in the back of the frame, it would look like this. Backer, mat board, piece, another mat board, and then glass. Okay. So the mat board. Now there's levels of right and wrong. I say this like this because, again, framers love to debate this, and for me, it's whatever the piece that is being framed and needs. Not everything needs to have like major, how do I say this? Not every piece needs to, we don't need to worry about like everything being completely acid free for every single piece that comes in to my counter. However, both of these mats are white, both of these mats are acid free. This is considered more, let's see, this is called a museum mat, and this is an alpha mat. So we've got rag, this is made out of cotton, and this is a mat, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words. I apologize. I'm losing my words. This one here, you can't see the difference for you guys. I'm going to turn them around so you can actually see the difference. Although they're backwards to you, aren't they? Shoot. Okay. Well, you can still see. I'll point out the letters. So alpha rag, alpha mat. Rag is made out of cotton, 100% rag cotton. Hello, Marianne. And then mat is made out of 100% virgin alpha cellulose, which is basically wood pulp that's been treated. And oh, it's not backwards. Oh, great. I thought it was for some reason. It's backwards for me. Yeah, so this is wood pulp that has been treated and the acid's been removed. Both of these are 100% acid free and are totally fine for all of your treasures. However, the museum mat is the only mat we are allowed to use for certain, like, museum standards. There's lots of rules for things that are done in museums, in libraries. So you can argue that the rag mat is more acid free because it's 100% cotton rag, which by nature is acid free. If you are curious, you can look a lot of this information up in the Library of Congress. They actually have like documents that talk about this stuff. They do the same thing. It's just that this one started out as wood pulp and had to be changed, whereas this one was natural. Cotton, wood pulp, both acid free. That's annoying, isn't it? You don't need to know all of that when you go into your framer. All you need to know is that your framer understands all of this stuff. That's all you have to know. And how do you find that out? You just start asking your framer questions, and once they start getting geeky about it, you're in the right place. If they say, oh, I don't know, you might want to check out. Are they the same price? They're not the same price, but there's not such a huge difference in the pricing. The pricing between the mats get more expensive when you start to add fancy fronts like fabric and linen and that kind of stuff. I am your framer and I'm a geek about this stuff. Yeah, so there's not a huge difference. There is a difference, don't get me wrong. I'm so glad, Rach. I'm such a geek about this stuff. I love going to the framing trade shows and listening to the experts in the field like debate back and forth, and like they get like, especially with the rag and the alpha cellulose, it's just so funny to hear them because like the difference in them, like, you know, based on time and degradation of like, you know, the material, whatever, like all the studies, it's so minute that again, every day it doesn't matter. It's just when you know, maybe it matters if it's like the Declaration of Independence or the Magna Carta. I'm such a geek. So yeah, sorry, Alice. I was answering if there was a big difference in price. There is a difference, but not a big difference. Like, you know, on like an average 11 by 14, if you were to use the Alpha Mat opposed to the rag mat, you'd probably save maybe $5. So it's not that big of a difference. It can be a big difference when you start layering these, or if you do want to do like the ones that I'm using are double thick, so these are a lot more expensive than the single or the 4-ply. I won't even get into all of that with you. I can do a geeky video on mat boards and I can sit here and talk for 2 hours, but you don't want that. Okay, so that is the matting. No, Alice, you cannot see a big difference in person. I would be able to show you in person how you can tell the difference. The cotton rag, have you ever seen handmade 100% cotton paper opposed to like a, I don't want to say like a machine pressed paper, but like a flatter, like notebook paper? You know, you can see how you can see some of the fibers in those really nice papers, but not so in the, I don't even know what we call them, but it's kind of like that, looking at the difference in the stationary stocks. Very similar to that, so not so much. So that's that. So that's what would go on top of the substrate if we were doing a museum mounting. I'm totally going to call someone at Ragboard. Oh, you don't call them. Marianne, are you starting trouble? Okay, so then that we're going to skip then the matting on the front because it's the exact same thing on the back. It goes to the front. Like I said, that's what we use the matting on the front for. So that matters too, because you are putting it on the front of the piece. So even though you're not seeing it, it's not covering the piece, it still covers a little bit of the edge. Also in the, what am I trying to say? In the framing packet, you know, you have the substrate and you have the glass, everything in between there. All of this is in that environment. That's what we call that. And so as things break down, they let out gases and fumes. And so you're less likely to add any type of harmful chemicals or harmful acids to that environment by keeping as much of it out of the environment as you can. So that's why they argue about the foam in the foam board, and that's the reason. They're very small reasons. Hey, Jason. Oh, thanks for popping in. It's good to see you too, pal. Have a good rest of your day. All right, so that's the mat board. If you decide to not use mat board, which I don't have anything without a mat board, we use something called spacers. And spacers, here we got 2 different spacers. Put my hand in front of it, actually. I'll put the foam board in front of it. So this one's clear and this one's black. This is 1/4 of an inch. This is 3/16 of an inch. To the drive-in? I want to go to the drive-in. Oh my gosh, I know, the acid-free tape. Oh my gosh. Again, there's lots of debating amongst the picture framers. And my advice to you guys is you don't need to know all of the differences between the tapes because there's lots of tapes and lots of differences. You just need to know that your framer knows the difference and geeks out about it. Right, Martin? Okay. So these are spacers, and these do the same job as your top mat. Hey, Danielle, thanks for being here, pal. It's just that you don't see them, so you don't have that extra added width to your piece. You want to just frame the piece itself, but you don't want the glass to touch it. Generally speaking, your framer will guide you in this direction because most framers, it goes against our code to have the glass pressed against a piece of art. If you're just framing a poster and you're like, yeah, I don't care, we'll do what you want. A lot of times I will do what my customer wants. If they don't want this either, I'll just make sure they understand what's going to happen to their piece without this. So that's what that does. That makes it so that you don't have your stuff, the spacers act as a mat, so you don't have to use mats, but your glass doesn't touch your work. I use this a lot. Sue can attest to this. Rachel can attest to this. Anyone who has ever had anything framed from me that doesn't have a mat basically can say, yes, I use these. All of you cross stitchers and needlepoint artists out there, when you go to a framer, definitely you need these if you're not using mats for your stitching, because glass should not compress your stitches. Illegal. Although you should always use glass because it protects your piece. Okay. Okay, is that it? Oh no, glass. Okay, glass is another one that framers geek out about. And again, you don't need to know all of the information. You just need to know a couple things. Let me grab I didn't bring it over here. Give me 1 second. Oh. Okay, there's a ton of glass out there, glass options, I should say. And generally, unless, some framers do production work where like maybe they're framing for a chain of restaurants or a chain of hotels, and those hotels and restaurants are really trying to keep things under a certain budget, and they're not caring about the integrity of the things that they're hanging. In that case, using plain old regular picture frame glass is totally fine. For you guys, generally you want to pick, like for everyone else, you want to pick glass that at least will protect your pieces from the damaging effects of UV rays, which comes from the sun, that can be in some of the lighting that we use in our houses. And I just looked at a lamp. Oh, I shouldn't have looked. I looked at it. Now I have spots in my eyes. But that said, there's also so many other kinds of glass that are protective. So you've got clear glass, you've got non-glare glass, you've got anti-glare glass, you've got anti-reflective glass, and you've got museum glass. And there's different combinations of all of those things in between. Like, are you kidding? I need glasses. I do need glasses. Great. So let's see if I can show this to you. So you can see reflection on both of them, but it's clear that this one has way less reflection. And on your wall, like this is, I'm literally sitting in front of my shop window with cars driving by, and like you can see the car right there. See, there's a car. You can't really see it as much in this one, and that's because this is museum glass. Museum glass and museum acrylic are the top of the line, like the best you can get. Acrylic would typically be the best because it's not going to shatter and cause damage to your artwork, where the glass could break. So acrylic is better than glass for those reasons. However, it's a little bit high maintenance. So for you, the consumer, when you go into a picture framers, you just want to make sure that their base glass, the one that like the lowest they can go, that they should go, is the conservation clear. I myself do not like the non-glare glass. Non-glare glass, it has been coated or etched or I want to say acid, but it has a very cloudy front to it, and it distorts the whatever's under the glass. And so I don't like it. If you're a fiber artist, you should not use it because it needs to be touching the piece or as close to it to be as clear as possible. The further away you hold non-glare glass from the piece, you can't see through it. So I don't love it. These are the two that I offer mostly. You know, when I said there's all kinds of options in between this and that, it's like, oh, well, I want the conservation clear. I don't need museum, but I want it to be that anti-reflective that museum is. So let's just go with that. That's super expensive. You might as well just go with the museum glass. So Alice had asked if there was a price difference, a big price difference between the matting. And I said, no, there's a big difference between these two. So you do want to make sure that you know, the thing that you're framing is worth it. And when I say worth it, that's another buzz phrase that people use all the time when they come in. They're like, oh, I don't know if this is worth it. Meanwhile, it's like a drawing that their, you know, son did that is irreplaceable. Irreplaceable? Non-replaceable. And so to me, that's the exact thing that you should be using the museum glass. Worth it doesn't mean value as in money. It means value also as in sentiment. So take that into account. Yeah. And so the glass, and then finally it's put in the frame. Like I said, I have probably a couple thousand, if not more, samples in the back here. I pulled this one out just to show you. It's a plain frame, which looks like, oh, that's lame, but it's not, because it's plain, but it is 100% walnut, and it's 100% made in America, which means there were lots of standards that went into making this, to producing this, to harvesting this. So you can walk into a picture frame shop and you can ask for, if you're looking for sustainable and ethical practices, a lot of the companies will help, or not a lot of them, I should say. A few of the bigger companies are really into listing and talking about and giving us, the framers, the information so that we can present it to you if you're interested. So yeah, made in America. not everything is made in America, but they're made in countries where there is more, there's some standards to follow. So I only work with wood moldings here. You can go into frame shops and big box stores and find frames that are called polystyrene, which is an extruded plastic. That's your choice. I prefer not to because of, yeah, good to know, right, Rach? I prefer not to use those materials because of just they're not, it's everything we use comes from something, so something has to be, we're consuming. So there you go. Consume, destroy, same thing. Not the same thing, I'm sorry. Anyway, the polystyrene is something that I avoid. I also don't want to cut it and breathe that stuff in. So all of that to say, you can find those things. I encourage you to look at less expensive wood frames that might be a little bit more simple than picking out a polystyrene knockoff of one of these, or something fancy, just for the sake of the look rather than what went into the frame. Does that make sense? I hope it does. There's all kinds of other materials that go into picture framing, the things that you won't know about because you don't need to see it, because at the counter we're just talking about the design. But like Martin had said, there's all the different tapes we have to use. I'm stoked for your shadow box too. I can't wait. June, right? I will see you very soon, a couple weeks. Yeah, so there's a ton of different tapes that we use here. I mean, a ton. There's tapes that we use for different types of tapes that we use for hinging the artwork to the substrate. Like right in that category alone, there's probably a dozen. Then there's tape that we use to hinge your mat board to your foam board or your, hold on, let me use this. Oh, your backer board and your mat board get hinged together. So here's a hinge like this. Your artwork is attached to this, and then your mat board goes over it. Like a little book. It looks like a little pamphlet. That's a piece of tape that we use. I saw that. Let's see. Rachel says, I was shocked at all the materials involved in framing. Yeah, you don't see it, right? Because it's all inside the frame. You see the glass, the frame, and the mat board. Then there's tape that I use to seal my framing pocket. Not every frame shop does that step because it's not a right or wrong. I live in New Jersey on the coast where everything is humid and damp, and so I do that seal to help keep that environment inside the glass and the backer as moisture free as possible. It also helps deter, when you live in a moist area, you can have chances for pests, for bugs, for mites. So that just protects. Not necessary for all framing projects, not necessarily every framer is going to do it that way. And certainly I would imagine framers in super dry climates wouldn't even bother. So and then there's the tape that you use to close everything off. So there's lots of tape. There is, what else? Oh, there's the hardware that I use. There is the way that you can't see on this frame. Let's see, maybe I can show it to you on any of my frames. I have, let's see. You can kind of see it on this one. Okay, so we put our frames together differently as well. Some framers have chop saws, some framers have foot choppers, some framers have, I can't even think. There's so many different ways to cut a frame and then to put them together. I use something called an underpinner. So you see that right there. That's called a V-nail. It's the nail that once I've glued this corner together, from underneath the underpinner, these are also called pins or V-nails, are pressed up into the frame. I worked at a frame shop back in the day that we would put these in corner clamps and then I would nail on both sides and then putty. One's not better than the other, it's just preference. How did you like that? That was a very long video. I tried not to geek out, but I feel like I did a little bit. I apologize, pals. Tomorrow, oh shoot, I'm not at home, obviously, I'm at the shop, so I don't have my list. But I think tomorrow I'm talking about, I forget. This whole week is about picture framing. I hope you'll join me. I hope it's interesting to you. I hope this was, do I glue? Oh yes, I definitely glue. Martin's asking if I glue my joint, and yes, I do. I know not all framers do. Oh, there's another method that I use as well. It's called wedges. There's a machine that cuts a hole and like presses. It's called a Hoffman key, and I can't remember exactly. It's a machine that I want so bad, but I have to save my pennies for it. But yes, sorry, Martin, I'm off on a tangent and geeking out again. But yes, I definitely glue. Honestly, I think the glue is what holds the frames together, not the V-nails. I think the V-nails, I mean, I guess it's both, but if you glue a frame properly and you don't nail it, it's not going to fall apart. You really have to beat the crap out of it. Tomorrow we're geeking out about ragboard versus viscose mat board. Rach, no, we're not geeking out about that tomorrow. That was today. I forget what tomorrow is, but it's more picture framing. This whole week is picture framing. So I will see you tomorrow. I most likely will do this time of day as well. I was trying to do in the evenings after I was finished with my day, but I didn't go live yesterday or the day before because I can't do it that late at night. I was in bed last night at 8:15. All right. I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks for being here. And yeah, have a good night. Bye, friends.